Today, I'm going to be talking about the most painful part of life, failure, and how it's normal and you should actively be okay with failing and just know that if you fail, that is better than worse. I'm going to talk about two personal experiences I've had with how I felt at the time was catastrophic failure. But then I was able to use those experiences and use the knowledge I gained from these failures to be able to capitalize and profit off of them tremendously. We'll talk about the first one that hurt more than the second. Career failure. Career failure is often the most disappointing, the hardest, the most frustrating because you are given training, tools, resources, and knowledge that is literally paid for by a company and you do not have to come out of pocket for it most of the time. So as a bartender, originally I was making good money. And then I would go home with my girlfriend and watch Selling Sunset. I would also, see things about real estate agents, how much they make, how much, developers are making. And I got an active interest in doing real estate. Nothing commercial, just regular residential. And I wanted to understand more of what I could do. So I was trying to use the knowledge and skills that I had from social media marketing to try to promote my real estate career. It wasn't successful pretty much at all. I didn't know what I was doing. I was floundering. And a year later, I had a lot of videos, almost no views, no sales, no transactions, and a whole lot of disappointment. And then I met someone who was able to help me a little bit more and give me all the training, tools, and resources I need. And lo and behold, again, 8 months go by, absolutely nothing. And from making really good money as a bartender, now good money is relative, but for someone who doesn't have any student debt and had a pretty flexible working schedule, it was very, very profitable and a very good idea and a very good choice for me at the time to be able to bartend, at night or during the day. To go from making really good money to making negative money every single month was very disappointing and very disheartening. And there's probably going to be people who tell you like, oh, you just didn't do this, you just didn't do this. For the most part, maybe I didn't make enough calls, maybe I didn't post enough videos, maybe I should have kept going. But, it's mainly a timing and connections thing when it comes to real estate. I came in after the boom when there was a lot less people transacting, and also I don't really have the most connections when it comes to real estate. So that made things absolutely, I would say not absolutely, but very difficult for me to get started in that career. But then I was able to take a really good experience from it. I got my first referral. And that referral ended up being my first flip, which I learned so much from and was able to profit tremendously off of. But it wasn't necessarily by luck. If I had gotten that the first month I was doing real estate, there's no way I would have, first of all, been able to buy it. And then there's no way I would have been able to understand everything that went into renovating and even understand how to negotiate a deal like that. So I had learned a lot of skills and a lot of things to benefit myself through those 2 years of what I felt like was flailing, catastrophic failure. And I was able to understand how negotiations work, understand what goes in through a transaction, see what kind of finishes are actually really nice, where to source materials, and what connections I need to do a project like this. So after that, I also learned how a CRM works, how email marketing works. I was able to see the back end of a lot of sales jobs that I had never really seen before. Being a bartender is a very physical, demanding job, but being a real estate agent is not as much physical as it is mental, strenuous, and very sales-based. So I would get to see the inner workings of how a sales business works and operates. So that was very beneficial to me towards the end. And I don't really see those times as a failure anymore. I see them as a very, very tough but essential learning experience. Still, it's very disheartening, and at the time, you don't feel like this is going to benefit you at the end. It's really hard to see, the light at the end of the tunnel when you're in the deepest part of the hole. The next one I'm going to talk about is business and how I tried to do a short sprint and it ended up being another huge catastrophic failure. So we're going to talk about the first time I tried selling products. It was a drop shipping experience, and I had bought a little course at the time. This was years ago when drop shipping was still relatively new. TikTok was still starting to flourish and starting to let you do sponsored ads, and they were converting. So I had given myself, I would say, about a week. This was before TikTok Shop even existed. I was giving myself about a week after maybe a month of setting up my website, testing products, shooting ad creatives. I gave myself a week to succeed because I didn't really have the capital at the time to keep pushing. And lo and behold, my first 2 products, since I didn't know how to do product research, since I didn't know how to do a lot of things, as well as marketing and ad copies, of course, it failed. It was a catastrophic failure. Again, I had lost, a majority of my initial investment, which wasn't really too much at the time. But for me, that was pretty much the last straw, and I had to go get a job again. So that was really disheartening, but I was brand new, so I didn't take it that hard. I was kind of, shooting for the stars at that time anyway, and it just didn't really work out the way I wanted it to. But years later, my girlfriend at the time wants to start her own business because we have a dog and our dog is allergic to a lot of things. And she's like, there is so many additives in all these treats, he can't eat any of them. But we want to train him better, so I want to make my own treats. She starts making her own treats and they're single ingredient and they're really nice. And then we have people, and she's like, I have a great idea. I should start selling these. And I'm like, okay, let's look at the business numbers. Let's look at your metrics. Let's look at your profit margin. Let's see if it's possible. And looking at all those factors, it was indeed profitable, and it was probably a really good idea. So I had given her access to the course I had gotten a few years ago. Even though product marketing and email and dropshipping are a bit different, they still have the same principles. So we were able to set up a website a little bit easier. Her website's beautiful, and it works really well, but we needed to learn how to set up a website a bit easier. We needed to learn what kind of ads to run, how it worked, and I was able to help her with some of the editing, some of the product photography, and how things worked, certain other guerrilla email marketing techniques. And I was able to really translate that experience initially that I had from that failure to give her the success that she has now found in the product industry. And that has given me more courage to be able to start to try and sell my own products again, design something again. And now that I have more capital, more understanding, and more patience, I'll probably have a better shot at it. Once you understand the numbers, once you understand how things work, and you taper your expectations, I'm not going to give myself a week timeline anymore. I'm going to give myself, a few months and at least a few different products of aggressive marketing, and I have a much bigger budget to play with now. I'll probably find more success. But that initial catastrophic failure was absolutely essential for me and her to succeed now in selling and distributing these products, in expanding our business, and in developing basically a brand. Because if it weren't for that course, I don't think this would have gone just as smoothly or just as easily. Now, that doesn't mean that this was easy, but that does mean that I had to fail for us to succeed later, even though I didn't know. And like I said, it's always harder to see the light at the end of the tunnel when you're right in the middle at the deepest part. But that's pretty much it. If you like what you saw, subscribe. And yeah, thanks.